Hello, and today we're going to be reviewing the Ryobi P591 18-volt offset shear. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, starting off at the rear of the tool, we have the 18-volt battery slot. The 18-volt battery slot will allow you to use Ryobi 18-volt batteries, and, well, quite frankly, there really is nothing to complain about from the overall feel of the battery slot. The battery's locked into place nice and firm and secure, and I don't think there's really too much wiggling or looseness to worry about here. I will say that the overall ergonomics of this tool definitely are not, well, suited for larger batteries. This tool pairs very well with a 2 amp hour battery, and that's the size battery I would recommend using with this particular tool. Anything bigger than 4 amp hours is definitely going to make this a very unbalanced tool and more difficult to use. So if you are planning on using this with a larger battery, say 6 amps or higher, you're definitely going to want to work on your upper arm strength in order to keep the blade, well, tilted forward. But other than that, everything is good. And next up we have the onboard Allen wrench, as well as the blade gap adjustment point. Now, the onboard Allen wrench is stored just above the battery near the base of the tool, and this is going to allow you to, well, easily adjust the blade gap of the tool. To adjust the blade gap, you simply, well, look on the right side of the head of the tool, and you will see a little area with a plus and minus sign, and you adjust it whichever way you need it. Overall, it's fairly easy to adjust, and I don't really have any complaints. Now, the gauge of this particular shear, the maximum is 18 gauge, but this does allow you to, well, work with, cutting through cardboard, as well as sheet metal or shingles or, greenhouse film. This comes in handy in a variety of different situations, and the ability to adjust on the fly with an onboard tool is a super nice feature, and one that I wish more tool companies would feature on their tools. So as far as I'm concerned, everything here gets a pass. And next up we have the belt clip point. There's actually a point on either side of the tool where you can attach the belt clip to that is included with the tool, and this is a nice little feature. But for me personally, I don't use it, so I didn't attach it. Moving on. Okay, next up we have the grip and the overall ergonomics of the tool. Now, the ergonomics of the tool are decent, but I think it could be a little bit better balanced. I just think that the rear end of the tool is a little bit on the heavy side, and it definitely makes it a little bit more challenging to use this in, well, positions where you're reaching. So at the end of the day, the ergonomics could be a little bit better, but at the same time, it's not horrible. Now, the grip on this particular tool is nice and large and is enclosed to protect your hands against any sort of debris that might snap up at you. The trigger is big enough where you can possibly use both fingers, although it kind of feels more like a finger and a half grip, but this does allow you to have better control over the variable speed nature of this particular tool's motor. And the grip has the typical Ryobi rubberized texture, which will help you, well, grip the tool but not really protect your hand from vibrations, but fortunately that's not really an issue with this particular tool. And the safety is easy to reach for, and since it's an always-on safety, that is going to definitely be something that you'll always be needing to reach for. Overall, the grip is perfectly adequate. The ergonomics could be a little bit better, and, well, yeah, that's about the sum of it. It's not great, but it's not horrible either. Moving on. And next up we have the variable speed trigger. The trigger is made out of a dark black plastic with indentation grooves that have been molded into it, but no rubberized texture, unfortunately. It is large enough where you can use 2 fingers in order to control it, and that is going to be very nice for controlling those variable speeds, especially at the lower end. Now, the variable speeds are fairly well defined on this particular tool, but I have to say there is a little bit of a jump in between basically your medium speeds and your ultra high speeds. It kind of feels like it skips over like just the regular high speeds. So that is one thing to take note of, but at the end of the day, once you get up to that level of speed, you're pretty much going for the ultra fast speeds anyway. So everything about the trigger on this particular tool seems to be perfectly adequate, and I don't really have any major complaints. And the fact they went with a dual finger trigger is definitely a nice change from their, well, pretty typical single finger triggers. So yeah, I have to say I am a fan of the trigger on this particular tool. And next up we have the safety. The safety is located directly above the trigger and is made out of a gray plastic. Now, the safety on this particular tool is an always-on style, which means whenever you want to pull that trigger, you will have to push the safety to one side or the other, and whenever you release the trigger, it will pop back into the safety position once you release it. This is understandable for this sort of a tool, but it is definitely not my personal favorite. But it definitely gets the job done, and it's easy to access, and once you commit it to muscle memory, it's fairly easy to work with. So as far as I'm concerned, the safety is completely adequate and nothing exceptional to write home about. Moving on. And next up we have the rotating head. Now the rotating head on this particular tool will allow you to change the head into 8 different positions, and in order to do this you will simply pull the lever that is directly below the trigger on the body of the tool backward, and then you will be able to adjust the head into any of those 8 positions. Overall, this is one of those little features that is nice to have, but really doesn't serve, at least me, any sort of practical use. I pretty much always leave this in the default straight up and down position, so at the end of the day, I think some people might find this to be a super useful feature, but for me personally, this is just not something that I necessarily look for when I'm looking at a pair of shears. But like I said earlier, I can see why some people would find this to be super useful. So yeah, moving on. Okay, last but not least, we have the blades. Now the blades on this particular tool are made out of metal and have the offset design. This does take getting used to, but once you get used to them, there really is nothing to complain about. They do a good job of cutting through everything from, well, thin greenhouse plastic all the way up to thick cardboard. And they work especially well for cutting through chicken wire and hardware cloth, which is where this is definitely going to be the most useful, or where I found it the most useful, because cutting hardware cloth and chicken wire with, well, regular shears or heavy-duty scissors is just a pain, and this makes my life so much easier. Now, when it comes to sheet metal, I really don't have any insight because I've never had any projects that require me to pick up sheet metal. My guess is as long as it's thinner than 18 gauge, this will probably work, but I'd still hold on to that receipt just in case. Okay, one more thing to consider would be how much the replacement blades for this particular shear cost. They are on the expensive side, coming in at a grand total of $62 for just the replacement blades, without shipping included, although you can find some free shipping websites. That is a fairly expensive repair job. I have not had to replace the blades on mine. This is just some information that you'll need to know before buying this particular tool to know if it's going to be worth it to you. I think it's worth it, so I still bought the tool. Okay, without a battery, the tool weighs 1,628 grams, which is about 3.5 pounds. And with a 2 amp hour battery, it weighs 2,070 grams, which is about 4.5 pounds. Okay, let's go ahead and recap with the pros and cons. And the first pro is 18 volt. 18 volt means that it's compatible with all your Ryobi 18 volt 1 Plus batteries. And if you so choose to, you can find adapters to adapt batteries over from other brands. Just remember, you do this at your own risk. Adjustable head. Having the adjustable head can be a useful feature in certain circumstances, although I personally don't find it to be something I use very often, but in my opinion, it's still a pro. Trigger. Overall, the trigger on this particular tool is very effective, and it allows you to have fairly precise control over the variable speeds, and so it is a pro in my opinion. Belt clip. The ability to attach a belt clip on either side of the tool is a nice little feature and a pro in my opinion. Battery life. Overall, the battery life is very good, especially considering this is using a brushed motor. So at the end of the day, the battery life is a pro in my opinion. Onboard wrench. Having the onboard wrench is definitely a useful feature and will help you finish your tasks quicker and more effectively because you won't be wasting time looking through that toolbox. And the only meh would be the ergonomics. It's not a very well balanced tool. It definitely is better balanced when you pair it with a smaller battery, but at the end of the day, it still isn't horrible either. It's just kind of in the middle of the road, and so it's not really a pro, it's not really a con, it's just meh. And the biggest con would be the price. Coming in at a whopping $120, this is a very expensive tool. At least when it comes to a Ryobi tool. It's not the most expensive shear on the market, but at the same time, I have to say, I really think they could have priced this tool a little bit more affordably, and it's really going to be up to you if it's worth the price or not. Brushed. Overall, I have nothing against brushed motors. I just think for the price that you're paying, you really should be getting a brushless motor. So at the end of the day, I would consider this to be a con. And that's it for the pros and cons. Final thoughts on this particular tool. I have to say, I'm not a big fan of the price tag, but I do really enjoy how much time this tool saves me. If you've ever had to cut lots and lots of chicken wire or hardware cloth, you will soon realize how much of a pain that is and how much you wish you had a tool that could do that job very effectively. This is that tool. Quite frankly, I really wish I had bought this tool sooner, and the price tag may be limiting, but depending on your personal needs, it could be justified. I still think it needs a lower price tag, especially since it doesn't have a brushless motor, but if you have a job that's going to take a lot of time and require a lot of cutting, this could potentially save you a lot of headaches and might be something worth considering. So with that being said, this tool comes recommended as long as you know what you're getting into and your wallet can handle the price. And that is it for this video. If you liked it, please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. God bless.